Anyway, continuing, so that's deletion. So that's substitution. You substitute, simply substitute pronouns um, to to any part of the sentence that it could be replaceable. Hindi naman pwedeng palit lang ng palit. Should be, the goal is to substitute and still have the same meaning of the sentence. All right. Next is optional and obligatory transformation. As with phonological rules, transformation can be optional, the stylistics, or obligatory. So the following: particle movement, transformation, topicalization rule, imperative, which was discussed on the recording, verb phrase deletion rule, pronominalization, and all optional rules of English or in English. They may or may not be applied. It's up to you if you want to use still that insertion. It's up to you if you want to use the, if say for example, it's up to you if you want to say drink up or drink it up. It's up to you. Or drink it without the up. It's up to you. It's optional. So in sign language, it's the same thing. It's the typological transformation is obligatory in sign language, but not particularly in English language per se. Because according to that, sign language begins with or starts with the object. All right, with the object. We're not familiar with sign language, but it's just stating that in sign language we start with the object. So another rule is the yes or no questions. When you transform a yes or no question from this, so when you see Q in a in a linguistic statement, linguistic statement, you see Q, it's supposed to be a sentence, question, an interrogative sentence, right? So in this case, in order to transform this, as you all know, we have discussed this before also, that you just need to put the verb phrase or the verb, or in this part, the auxiliary in front. So will Aaron eat his lunch? Just the same with the do and the did and the does. When there is no will or can or other auxiliary and helping verb, it's automatic that the when you're transforming statements, declarative statements, say for example, Aaron ate his lunch, Ate ate is a past tense. Between do, did, and does, which one is the past tense? Did. So if you're gonna translate it into questions, whatever declarative sentence it is, you look for the you look for and determine what is the tense of the verb. Okay, so in the sentence, Aaron ate his lunch. Ate is past tense between do, did, and does, which is the automatic and hidden verb in every declarative sentence. You use did, so you begin with did Aaron eat, because it's already did in the beginning. You already have the past tense in the beginning. Don't It's redundant if you make eat past tense. Did Aaron eat lunch? Yes, he did eat. Yes, Aaron did eat lunch, or Aaron ate his lunch. There. So, for example, you say Camille run. As in ARUN, run fast. Emitam ba? Run in the oval. If you're gonna transform it into a yes or no question, sorry. If you're going to transform it into a yes or no question, again, look for the verb in the sentence. It's run, R-U-N. It's in the present tense. Sorry. Camille runs. Let's clarify that. Camille runs in the oval, right? So runs, it's in the present tense. Between do, does, and did, what's the present tense? Does. Does Camille run? Run. You remove the S. Run. That's how you translate declarative sentences into questions. Yes or no? Questions. So ganun to. It's just here. Okay. So sequences of transformation. So in here, we'll just say that from a deep structure, you're gonna transform it into small structure. So these two sentences, consider did the dog chase the cat? The dog was blind. So it was said that a child may use two sentences that can be that an adult can transform or translate into one sentence. Say, for example, for kids, you need to say, did the dog chase the cat? The dog was blind. The kid is pertaining that the dog who chased the cat was blind. So an adult would perceive that the blind dog chased the cat. Right? So it was proposed that transforming deep structure into surface structure would look like this. In this example, did the blind dog chase the cat? In this example, you start. So this is question. So the dog, it's embedded, as you have known, because it's perception, right? It's more of perceiving that the understanding of an adult of an adult in these two sentences is that he inserted this description of the dog inside this. So on a larger scale, on a deeper structure, it would be like this. The dog was blind, chased the cat. Relative translation. It's on the previous video. Substitution. The dog, which. So from the dog, he used which. Was blind, chased the cat. The B was deleted, right? So deletion, number 3, the dog blind chased the cat. Movement, the blind dog chased the cat. So question formation, transformation. So your surface structure is just this one. So yun siya, from deep transformation, from the meaning, because you want to mean that the blind dog, that the dog who is blind is chasing the cat. Okay? So in surface structure, it would mean this way. You would could be this way. Okay. Next. So, wait lang. Ay, hindi pala. Okay. Next, grammatical judgment and ambiguity. All right. So it just discussed here what a fluent speaker would be like. So a fluent speaker has subconscious knowledge of the language that he knows. But a language that he doesn't know, he's clueless. Say, for example, in our case, we're not Spanish speakers. So if someone speaks to us in Spanish that is very, very fast, or two Spanish people are present in front of you and they're speaking to each other on their vernacular, the Spanish language, you wouldn't understand a thing. Yeah, it would sound gibberish. All right. So it was said that fluent language speakers knows whether or not the utterance is complete, and also, so therefore, he would know if the sentence or the utterance is grammatical or ungrammatical. All right. So the completeness of the the sentence that he understands. So in Tagalog, for us, we can, if say for example, in local dialects, if you're Kapampangan, and then you're talking to your classmates who's also Kapampangan, then your non-Kapampangan speaking classmates wouldn't understand the thing that you have said. So that is grammatical ambiguity. But then if there's someone of one of your classmates is learning Kapampangan, and upon learning he or she has this ungrammatical statement, you would already recognize it. That is grammaticality about ambiguity, right? Next, grammaticality about completeness. So fluent speakers would recognize a complete sentence. They would recognize that um, something is missing. So in this sentence, that house is not, ayun, that house not pretty. That house not pretty. So in English, this is incorrect. This is ill-formed grammar. Okay? Because you lack the verb. Remember, in English language, we need the verb. In other languages, we don't. Just like the Yaqui, it says, the Native American language. So we don't understand this much, but as to give an example, they said that they do not need verb for them to recognize that it's a complete sentence. But for us, for English, for those who knows us, for those who knows English, or for second language learners, for second language teachers, they must recognize the completeness of a sentence. Also, you would recognize as well that our sentence during the recursion topic, the dog that chased the cat, that chased the what, the chase. You know that chase is really not the up, though it's very very long. You recognize that's still not complete because the boy hasn't done anything yet. It's just a description of the boy. The that. It's just a description of the boy and no verb phrase yet. All right. So completeness, just like this. For instance, the verb holds in some contexts need another word to complete its meaning. For example, the boy holds. The boy holds where or brings. This is true with transitive and intransitive verb. So intransitive verb, even though you do not have another or someone to receive the action, it's fine. Meanwhile, in transitive, what I said intransitive. In transitive, you need to pass the action to something. So in this sentence, this is incomplete because nothing was to hold on to by the boy, right? Next, grammaticality judgment about word order. A fluent English speaker would know that that a well formed sentence has proper order. We must, for I forget, this is the rule for grammar. A sentence must satisfy the following condition. Is grammatical if the sequence is correct. So you must know proper sequencing in sentences. And the relationship between these words conform to the syntax rules. You do not modify adverbs to nouns. Correct? Correct? Adverbs to noun. You do not. You do not modify verbs because it's not modifier. Right? So there should be, and also the relationship between this between the plural form and the singular form of the verb of the subject to its counter verbs. And also need to consider if it's past tense or present tense or future tense. For future tense, there's no problem. Because whether it is plural or singular, it would precede or the verb will precede with shall or will. Okay. With the case of the past tense, there are different forms. Could be regular or irregular. When you say regular, you need to add D or ED. When you say irregular, you need to transform it to something else. Change the spelling or or alter something from it. So so that's past. But then it doesn't matter what is the subject's plurality or singularity. With regards to the present tense, you need to remember that present tense, the singular form for present tense is always with the S. The verbs has S. She, singular, sings well. They, they sing well. So singular has the in you spell out singular, it's S. So between singular and plural, which one has the S? Singular. So when you do just have that pattern so that you won't forget. Okay, so when you see that the subject is singular and it's in the present tense of the verb, you put S at the end of your verb. So she dances gracefully. They dance gracefully, right? So where are we? Order. It's in proper order. Right? You would know that it's a well-formed grammar if it's in proper order. All right. Although there are several. In English, we follow the SVO: subject, verb, and then object. And then there's also subject, verb. If there is direct object, indirect object, then subject, verb, object of the complement. Subject, verb, object of the preposition. It's always object at the end. That's the pattern for grammaticality for English. In Tagalog and other languages like Irish and Welsh, you follow verb, then subject, and then object. Say for example, naglilinis si nanay ng bahay. Naglilinis is the subject. Is the verb. Si nanay is the subject. And then ng bahay is the object. So, so just like English, French, Thai, and Swahili follows the pattern subject, verb, and object, because that's a general word order. But for other languages, Bengali, Turkish, Persian, Japanese, and Navajo, it's SVO: subject, object, and verb. Right? So for Fijian and Malagasy, it's VOS: verb, object, and subject. And then for Carib, Brazilian language, object, verb, and then subject, and then object, subject, and verb for Savante of Brazil. Okay, so if you're gonna translate, so also a few languages have indigenous languages of such as some indigenous languages in Australia allows the speaker flexibility in the choice of word order. Say, for example, the SVO refers to a sentence linear, but sometimes this happens. The SVO, especially, so for instance, the SVO word order of English describes declarative, but the interrogative questions, but not interrogative questions. So interrogative questions, did he see a man? So the helping auxiliary verb begins from the sentence. So case indicates that the function of nouns, pronouns, and adjectives within a sentence and the relationship of those words to verb and other verbs within the sentences. So this is what I've discussed earlier, yung gamit ng did, tsaka ng do, at tsaka ng does when you translate it into question. All right. So in English and other analytic languages, linear word order alone usually indicates the grammatical function of words. In its case, in the sentence, dogs chase cat, dogs is the subject of the sentence, right? Nominative case by virtue, but its virtue of its placement before the verb. If the sentence was cat chase dogs, cats are doing the chasing, and the words cats in the word cats is in the subject. So in addition to placement in the sentence, form of of the word or in inflection morpheme might indicate its case. So in English, I, me, and my have the same meaning. So the person who is speaking and then goes on. Ito na tayo. So grammatical judgment about word combination. Okay, so when we say grammatical when we say grammatical order or grammaticality judgment, word combination. So some lexical categories occur. Words can occur together and others cannot. For instance, the looked is not a possible combination of words in English. The article a, an, and the do not occur before verbs. Combination of words. So articles plus the verb are not grammatically correct. The looked, especially if it's already past tense. But so articles occur before many types of verbs and a gerund. A gerund is I think I've already mentioned this. So because its function is a noun. Its form is a verb, but its function is a noun, right? So example, the running of the Kentucky Derby. Okay. So adverbs are not used to modify nouns. I've been mentioning this. It's only used to modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. All right. So a fluent speaker of English would find the sentence ungrammatical. The quickly person is home. So we don't use this because you never modify quickly a person. You can say the quick person is home or the person got home quickly. And yun. So other classes of words can only occur with other specific categories of sentences. For instance, will or will occur with, this one. Will or may occur with a certain types of verbs, whereas transitive verbs requires a direct object. So we're just emphasizing that if it's a transitive verb, it requires a direct object because it would violate completeness in grammaticality. So usually transitive verb it would always need an object to pass on the action. All right. So with regard to intransitive, it can stand alone. So intransitive either end a sentence or combine with or modified by a prepositional phrase, an adverb, or an adverb phrase. So say for example, Jack fell. Even though these words are gone, you would understand that Jack fell. So fell down the stairs. Down the stairs is a prepositional phrase. Fell down quickly is an adverb. Fell down very quickly is an adverb phrase. So some verbs may or may not take a direct object. So the verb to drink, to drink is an example of a verb for which a direct object is optional. So for example, so both sentences are grammatical. And drank. And drank milk. Right? So grammaticality judgment, several non-factors. So grammaticality of an utterance is not based is not based on whether or not you have heard that utterance before. So that's why when your teacher says before that if it sounds right or if it sounds good, it's grammatically correct. Because in here, it's already stating that if you haven't heard it before, it doesn't necessarily mean you cannot have a basis that it's incorrect. So long that it's complying to the rules that we have already discussed earlier, we can consider that as a well-formed grammar. Language is productive so that most of the sequences you create and hear or see, right? Language is productive so that most of the sentences you create or see or hear or see, if written or signed, you have no experience before. Also, the grammaticality of an utterance does not depend on whether you understand the word in the utterance or not. Because sometimes, really, say for example, this one, polystyrene microbeads can be coated with specific lensing ligands. Yes, these are all new to us. We do not know the meaning of, we may not know the meaning of these words, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an ungrammatical or ill-formed grammar. What we have here is that what's the problem here is the semantics because we don't understand the words. But if you're gonna, just one good solution here is you consult the dictionary. So what's polystyrene, microbeads, and also the ligands, right? However, this sentence is grammatical and would be understandable to a person who know the meaning of the words, right? So say for example, your education students, when you talk about DLL or DLP, only you can understand that. Daily love, I think daily lesson love, I think it's DLL, and DLP is daily lesson plan. Then there is RBEC, and then there is the BEC, the BEC, and then there is the spiral, and also the scaffolding. Say, for example, for education students, you would if you say a scaffolding approach, for other people, they would imagine scaffolding as the scaffolding out for constructions. For us, scaffolding approach for learning is that during the first um, years of learning, there is always a guide. Isn't it that when you're building, say for example, if you're constructing a building, the scaffold is the guide or before the so that there would be a foundation before the entire building is constructed. It supports. So why is it called scaffolding? This is basic. Was one of your major, I think, facilitating learning. If not facilitating learning, I think also or on other learning strategies, learning approach, learning theories, right? So it's giving you. So when you say scaffolding, um, when for other people, you say it's part of construction. But for education professionals, for teachers, they would think that scaffolding is a strategy that would support um, the students first, and then eventually you're removing the guide from from this from your from when the scale is already established. It's like the bicycle. So before, if you wanna train yourself to to bike or to ride the bicycle, at first you need to have the trainer wheels at the side. But if you already acquired the skill to balance in the bicycle, the trainer wheels could be detach from the whole bicycle. So just it's just like the scaffolding. So there are skills that you need to teach your students that needs your support and guidance. All right. But once you are you've already got the skill, you can already um, you can already lessen the support from and let them learn further because of the skill that they've got, learn further um, to the advanced skills that they need to uh, acquire, right? Say for example, um, at first, di ba, you train children to write, and then there are traces. Yan, they're tracing their names. Okay, so if let's see, I know you will not be able to encounter this, but this if you're gonna train your students to write, uh, not on, I mean, team writing on the spot without the laptop, so handwritten. I don't know if you experienced this, but the ruler wherein there is the half inch on the left and then 1 inch on the right when you do the theme writing. That's another example of you guide them first. There is a guide for us so that when we write the theme paper on the bond on the sheet of paper, there is the side, the margining of the side are all aligned. So eventually, it's not already practiced because we already have the laptop and the computer. But before, that's how we were taught. During my time, that's how we were taught to write essays or um, technical format wise. That's how we were taught. There is always a guide of we will put a light marking of a pencil at the side of our papers, 1 inch and half inch at the other side, so that there will be a guide so that our writings will be aligned. So that's one. So after that, if you're already used to doing that, so in your next level, you don't need to have. If you already trained yourself with writing on a straight line or aligning it on a straight line, you don't need to have the ruler guide again. That's how you teach. So that's why have we have gone to scaffolding anyway. So there, it doesn't mean that you do not understand the word. It doesn't mean it's grammatically incorrect. It's just that you lack the vocabulary to understand it. Okay? Say, for example, consider this sentence. Okay, you might understand the meaning of the sentence that you judge not to be grammatical. So consider this sentence. The people is in the room. The people is in the room. This sentence is understandable, but is not a well-formed grammar. It's ungrammatical. Why? Because when you say people, this is plural. Relationship. Violated a relationship. This is plural. So this should be are. The people are in the room. The person, the man is in the room. But if it's all the people are in the room. The sentence, the President of the United States is a 3-year-old cat, is grammatical, but it's not factual. Right? It doesn't mean that if it's not, it's fictional, doesn't mean it's not grammatically incorrect. It's still grammatically correct. It's just that it's not factual, right? The grammaticality of an utterance is not based on whether or not the utterance makes sense, so long it's grammatically correct. Okay, a fluent speaker might even judge a sentence or longer utterance as being grammatical if it contains nonsense words. So Lewis Carroll, you would encounter this on literature. Yung Jabberwocky. Yan. So example is, "'Twas brilliant in the slithy tops, dig Gary in the gimble of the wave. All of them seaward the borogoves, and the mom wrath out great." Right? So this is, in Jabberwocky, this is well-formed grammar, but quite gibberish. But still, it's a literature, so we can't do anything about it because this guy has creative writing license. Right? Next is ambiguous sentences. So in addition to making grammaticality judgment, fluent speakers usually can detect ambiguity in a sentence. A sentence is ambiguous if it has more than one meaning. Say, for example, can you see why the sentence become ambiguous? So the women appealed the women appealed to all men. Here, appeal is the problem. Does it mean we're all desirable, and pleaded? Such ambiguity, which involves a word that has more than one meaning, is called lexical ambiguity or polysemantic ambiguity. The lexical ambiguity is often consciously used to form puns such as, "Fish are really smart. They always are found in schools." So there are lexical ambiguity is a semantic problem. Comes already with the meaning because it's double meaning or it's having several meanings. So ambiguous sentences. So when the constituent of a sentence can be organized in more than one way, we refer to structural ambiguity or syntactic ambiguity, or in Tagalog, malabo. Somehow it's ambiguous. It's quite odd, it's not confusing, quite malabo in Tagalog, all right? So the following sentences can be organized in two ways. So Chris owns large dogs and cats. This is ambiguous because it can mean Chris owns large dogs and cats of any size. Here, large is linked to dogs and not cats. So meaning dogs could mean that the dogs are only large and the cats are not large, could be of any size. All right, or it could mean that both animals are of large size. Okay, so still another type of ambiguity occurs when neither words nor structure nor are ambiguous, but various constitute can be labeled as different parts of speech or lexical categories. So this is parts of speech ambiguity. Examine this sentence. Andrew will forget tomorrow. In this sentence, so the sentence can mean that by tomorrow, Andrew will forget something, or that tomorrow that Andrew will forget a specific day or event that in here is labeled as tomorrow. So there are two things. In here, Andrew will forget tomorrow. You can mean Andrew, yes, will forget something to bring tomorrow. Or Andrew will forget that there is an event tomorrow. Right? Note that tomorrow has the same basic meaning in each interpretation, and that the constituent of the sentence cannot be organized in more than one way. The ambiguity stems from the fact that tomorrow can be an adverb modifying will forget. It answers when Andrew will forget. It's or it can be a noun. Tomorrow, so in the first explanation that something will be forgotten by Andrew tomorrow. Alright? Meanwhile, it could also be a noun. An event will forget tomorrow. Makakalimutan ni Andrew ang bukas in Tagalog. Makakalimutan, pwede in Tagalog, makakalimutan ni Andrew kinabukasan. May siguro susi, yeah, or papel, ballpen, or in Tagalog, ang kinabukasan could mean he has selective amnesia like 50, like the 51st dates, if you know that movie, or there's something tomorrow, that event, and that he will forget it. It's a noun. In this case, it is the object of the verb forget and tells what it's going to be forgotten. So yun yung explanation kanina. It is easier to see the possible arrangement of constitute in a phrase marker. The example should generate, the sentence could generate the following two phrase markers. So in here, sentence, as usual, noun phrase, auxiliary, verb phrase, noun, auxiliary, noun phrase, verb phrase, adjectival phrase, adjective. Or, this could be, instead of adverb phrase, ginawang noun phrase. Okay. So notice that the diagram, the same function, the tomorrow, but you have two phases of tomorrow. Noun and then adjective. I mean adverb, adverb rather. We will also know when words or sentences mean the same or different things. So no one will confuse. I am going to the ball game with your house on fire. So these are all somehow ambiguous sentences. Yay! It ends the lesson and it ends and it ends the topic. Ayun. It ends the semester.